Hey guys, this is Miss Harlequin, and in this video, we're going to be doing a close reading annotation of the poem Democracy by Sara Holbrook. All right, so we're going to go stanza by stanza. We're going to use a chunking strategy. And as we read through the poem, we're going to be breaking it apart to really get at some of the deeper issues that Sara Holbrook is talking about. So we've done our first reading already. We know what the poem is mostly about. Now let's look at some of the language, some of the details, the way that Sara Holbrook develops her ideas. All right, stanza 1. My office is government issue. The basics: one metal desk, one chair, a stack of folders, 4 rubber stamps, and a whole lot of paper in need of baling wire or a match. A gray office beside a multicolored room full of folks waiting on government basics. All right, so the fact that she says her office is government issue tells us right from line 1 that she works for the government, right? And we talked in class about how working for the government can mean a lot of different things. A lot of government offices are things like the DMV, the post office, and then welfare office. And we know that this particular government job has to be welfare or food stamps because she talks about how people are there waiting on government basics. So the post office and the DMVs are not basics. When people talk about the basics in life, they're talking about the basic things that you need to survive. And so that is food, that's shelter. It could even be a housing office. But since she does talk about types of foods later, we're going to go with the stronger inference that this is welfare and food stamps. She describes the office as being one metal desk, one chair, a stack of folders. So this is a very bare and kind of empty office. It doesn't sound very engaging. And then she talks about how there's a whole lot of paper. So this is a recurring theme, or not really theme, we would say maybe a motif in this poem, because paper is referred to multiple times. The fact that she says the paper in her office is in need of either wire, that makes me think of recycling when you wrap up the newspapers with wire or some kind of string to be recycled, but then also a match. So what would she be using the match for? She would clearly be using it to burn the paper, which makes me wonder why. Is she a pyro? That's not really a logical inference because there's no other evidence that she has that criminal kind of tendency. So then why would somebody burn a stack of papers? Well, you would only burn papers in an office if you didn't need them. Like if we went into my classroom, I'm not going to burn the papers that are in there. I need them. There's student papers in there. There's my lesson plans. They're necessary. If I was going to burn something, it would be the papers that I don't need. So right here, it's kind of already setting up the fact that she finds a lot of her job to be useless or unnecessary. Now, there's one more thing I'd like to talk about here, how she describes, once again, the office as gray, so that imagery shows that it's boring. And then also she describes it as a multicolored room, which shows us that the people who are waiting for welfare or food stamps are very diverse. It's not just one ethnicity or racial group. Thump, 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 thump. A large woman thumps, thumps, thumps past my office. Thump, thump down the hall to the ladies' room. Sounds of running water. A squeaky door slaps against the wall and oozes towards a bumpy close. All right, so here we have the words thump, thump, which of course brings to mind a sound, which lets me know that this is onomatopoeia. So my question is, what is this sound representing? What's the deeper meaning behind the use of the onomatopoeia? Well, then you have the next line that kind of explains it. It's a large woman walking to the bathroom. And now she's walking, she's so heavy, she's so overweight, that you can hear the noise that her feet are making on the floor as she's walking down the hall. And then we also have this imagery here. We have the sounds, sensory details, the squeaky door slapping shut, and it's oozing towards a bumpy close, which kind of gives me the like heebie-jeebies. I think about how gross that kind of sounds. Like it's oozing, the door is oozing. So the fact that the door has a very bumpy close, it kind of just adding to the imagery from the first stanza that this office is kind of run down. Thump, thump. I look up as she passes again. Dark hallway, dark clothing, white toilet paper. Thump, thump. I watch after her passing. Thump, thump. She stole the toilet paper. Also government issue, 2 rolls per day. All right, so first we have continued imagery here. And this imagery is very interesting because it is a contrast. You've got dark, right? Dark hallway, dark clothing, white toilet paper. Sara Holbrook did not have to describe the clothing or the hallway as dark. Dark and white are opposites of each other, which when you have opposite coloring like that, it's going to set up a contrast, especially if one of the colors is white and the other is dark. It's going to make the white stand out. So if you think about it, she's really placing emphasis on the toilet paper and the fact that the woman has stolen it, which is also setting up the main conflict in this poem. Now, why is it such a big deal that the woman stole the toilet paper, besides the fact that stealing is wrong? Well, this is a government office, and right here in this line, Sara Holbrook's telling us that they only get 2 rolls per day. Now, remember in stanza 1 where she described how there is a multicolored waiting room full of folks, which when she says full of folks, which we didn't even actually talk about how that's alliteration right there. But when I hear full of folks, I think about how crowded this waiting room must be. There are many, many people who are poor and in need of the government's help. And so right here, at 2 rolls per day, that can't possibly be enough toilet paper for an entire office. And so if you're going to now be down and the toilet paper's been stolen, what are the people supposed to do? Why are they only getting 2 rolls per day? I'm going to make an inference that this is about their budget. They're not being given a lot of money by the government, and this is all that they're being given. Issued by the same government that will murder a mountain of forest for the confusion of paper it takes to purchase a pencil through proper procurement procedures. All of those P's, right? So we know what that is. That is alliteration, right? Alliteration is where you have the repetition of the initial beginning consonant sounds. So there's no vowels at the beginning of the words. They're all consonants, and it is the same consonant. And just like many sound devices, it is used to create rhythm. And of course, like every other technique, it can also be used for emphasis, right? The use of techniques make whatever is being written about stand out. The same government that offers tax-abated housing to for-profit football teams and levies income tax on where's the profit, unemployment compensation. All right, so we're really going to have to break this down into 2 different parts, because even though each part builds on the one that came before, this first section is talking about the paper, and the second section is talking about taxes. So let's start with the paper. All right, so the first thing that stands out to me is when she says, the first thing that stands out to me is when she says murder a mountain of forest. The word murder. You're murdering the forest. So what are you doing if you're murdering the forest? It's not literal. It's clearly figurative language. I would say that this is a metaphor, that the act of murder is being compared to what the government is doing. So what could you be doing to a forest that would be similar to somebody murdering another person? Well, it's you murder, you're killing. How are you killing the trees? Well, we kill the trees if we knock them down, right? They're no longer alive. Why do we knock the trees down? To make paper. So the fact that she describes knocking the trees down to make paper as murder shows a very negative connotation. To make that comparison really shows us that the making of the paper bothers her. But is it that she doesn't like paper in general? Well, if you read on, it's paper that's being used to purchase a pencil through proper procurement procedures. So when you procure something, you're actually like getting it. And when you follow a procedure, it's like a set of rules that you have to follow. So these are rules that she has to follow in order to buy a pencil. What are those rules? Those rules involve paperwork. So think about it. If you want to purchase a pencil, instead of just going to the store with money and buying a pencil, You have to fill out paperwork to request that the pencil gets purchased. It's like an unnecessary step. Why can't you just go and buy the pencil? Why do you have to fill out paperwork before you buy the pencil? So once again, this is all part of the imagery that she is creating to describe her job and to set up her perspective on how she feels about this job. It is unnecessary paperwork. It's equivalent to murder. So already we see that this is a government who is doing things in a really kind of screwed up kind of way, in a way that the speaker of the poem does not approve of. And then in the second section, we have another example of what that same government, the same government who will only give you 2 rolls of paper per day, that same government who makes you fill out useless paperwork just to buy a pencil, and they're murdering the trees for that. This is the same government that offers tax-abated housing. So we talked about this vocabulary word, how abated is something that is reduced. And that when you have something that's tax-abated, it's usually a program that's trying to get people to do more of something. Like, if you buy these apartments or if you buy these buildings, we're going to charge you less taxes. So it's almost the same kind of thing that a store does when they put things on sale. Like Payless will have buy one, get one. You kind of wonder, well, how can they afford to give away free shoes? Well, because they know more people are going to come in to buy shoes if they know they're getting one free. So they actually, in the long run, end up making more money. It's the same thing with tax abated. If you're giving the reduction of taxes, you know that's going to be an incentive for people to come and actually spend their money. So in the long run, you make more money. So who are they offering tax abatement to? They're offering it to for-profit football teams. Now, I don't know about you, but when I think about football teams, I think about money. Those football players are millionaires. And the owners of the football teams are even richer or wealthier than the actual players. So they give the really wealthy people less money, less taxes, but then they are collecting or levying income tax on, where's the profit? Unemployment compensation. So we've talked about that too. Unemployment is a program that you can have in the United States if you get fired from your job. It's part of what our taxes pay for, these kind of programs to help people out when they're on tough times. If you get fired, the government will give you a weekly unemployment salary. It's very small. It's nowhere near what most people's salaries are, but it's just something to sustain you until you get your new job. It's something to give you a little bit to buy your basics, to buy food, hopefully pay your rent. Now, these are people who do not have a job. They're not getting income, and yet they have to pay taxes on that money that the government's giving you. So this would be an example of something very ironic. Think about it. Irony is the opposite of what you expect to have happen. Do you expect the government to take money from poor people for taxes, but to not charge the wealthy who could afford to pay the taxes? Now, if you're cynical, you're going to say, yes, of course I expect that. But we're not talking about a cynical person's point of view. We're talking just logically. Logically, you would think the government would help out poor people, and the rich people who can afford to pay the taxes would pay them. All right, and now she continues in the next stanza, once again listing something that the government is doing wrong. The same government that issues food stamps for Kool-Aid, popsicles, and tater tots, but not for toilet paper. Like it's some privilege that poor folks don't need. So you've got a situation where poor people can use their food stamps for Kool-Aid, popsicles, and tater tots. Those all sound like junk foods, right? They're not the healthiest foods. And yet here, they can't buy toilet paper with those food stamps. So that's one of the rules of the food stamp program. It's only to be used on food. But again, this is an example of irony, right? The government's supposed to be helping you out, taking care of you. How is allowing you to buy foods that are unhealthy, that are going to make you sick, possibly lead to diabetes? How is that more helpful than allowing you to buy something like toilet paper that everybody needs? It's a basic necessity. And then we also have an example of diction here, right? Because she uses the word privilege. She could have used the word right. And you can think about what's the difference between something being your right, like a basic human right, and something that's a privilege. And you can see when she says, like it's some privilege that poor folks don't need. She's not being literal here. She's being sarcastic. So you've got a double dose of irony. You've got the situational irony. The situation is not what you would expect. And then you've got the sarcasm, the verbal irony. That same government issues us 2 rolls per day, 94% of the days since our last 6% cut. So again, you've got her bringing up budget. And the fact that their budget is not very large and it's constantly being cut. And you've got the word 2 rolls. It's all in a line by itself. That's to emphasize. Almost I can feel the speaker's tone of voice here. Her disbelief over the fact, maybe even disgust, that that's all the government is issuing to them. Just 2 rolls. I can picture her shaking her head as she says it. I rub at the crow's feet, which are deepening into my mother's face. She stole the toilet paper. Again, you've got that refrain, right? And anytime there's a refrain in a poem, you know that that's for emphasis, right? The clock silently mouths that it's just 3:05. You got personification here. When I picture a clock mouthing the time, and it's such a random time too. It's 3:05. It's not 3 o'clock. It's not 3:15. It's just like middle of the day kind of number. And most jobs, you have to work until 5 p.m. So she's looking at the clock and it's only 3:05. It's just 3:05. So it's that feeling like where you feel like the work day or the school day in your case is interminable. You just want it to be over. I wait for a moment, reluctant to go once more against the mountain. Now, she's not literally going up against the mountain. This is a continuation of that metaphor that she already set up in an earlier stanza. When she first mentioned the mountain, it was the mountain of forest that they cut down to come up with the paper they use for their paperwork. So this mountain was about her job, the mountain of paperwork. Here she's going up against the mountain. It's not the paperwork necessarily, but this is still an extended metaphor about her job. Everything she has to do in her job is climbing this mountain. The mountain represents the job. But it makes her lightheaded. So if you're climbing that mountain and you're getting lightheaded, how do you feel about what you're doing? It's making you physically ill. Her job is not something she enjoys. Now here she's reluctant to do her job. What is it that she's reluctant to do? What does she actually end up doing in the next stanza? It's going and taking the toilet paper back from this poor woman. She doesn't want to take the toilet paper back, but she has to. It's her job. Ma'am, did you take our toilet paper? She looks straight ahead, 2 rolls propped on knees flung wide. She is slow to acknowledge my presence, slow looking up at the self-conscious stand I have taken beside her overfilled chair in this overfilled room. Here you've got another great example of diction, right? When I picture the overfilled chair in the overfilled room, I think about how crowded it is. So she's almost calling our attention to the fact that there are many, many, many poor people there. It's so many people that there's too many. It's overfilled, more than you really can take. Crowded can be a little bit more positive, right? Like if you're in a concert and it's crowded, if you're looking at the point of view of the band, they're going to be happy that it's crowded. That means they have a lot of fans, they're making a lot of money. But when you look at it as a welfare office and it's overfilled, it's a bad thing. You don't want to have that many poor people who need help from the government. And we can see here that the speaker is feeling self-conscious, right? She doesn't want to take this toilet paper away from this woman. But again, she has to go up against that mountain. And then in a glance, she reminds me that I am too tall, too thin, too well-dressed, and too blessed white. She is too privileged, right? She is really not on any level to understand what this poor woman needs to do. I need it, she replies. And that need, I know, is not entirely selfish. That need embraces the needs of her children, her grandchildren, maybe a neighbor. But it does not embrace the needs of the neighbors with whom she shares this waiting room. So who are the neighbors in the waiting room? Those are all of the other poor people who are there to get their welfare check and their food stamps. Now, they have needs as well, but this woman is not thinking about them. I have to ask for it back. I say, citing the needs of others. So the speaker has to think about everybody. She can't just think about this one woman who she might feel compassion for, but she has to think of the greater good. Reluctant herself, she complies. Practically speaking, she is a Republican. Now, obviously, she's not literally a Republican. Um, Most of the time, it wouldn't really be logical for somebody who's poor and needs help from the government to be a Republican, because many Republican policies are about cutting things away, like cutting back on welfare, cutting back on food stamps. So it's usually a Democratic view that you should help people in need, and Republicans are a little bit on the other side of that issue. So once again, we've got an example of irony. In this case, verbal irony, where the speaker is being sarcastic. She does not literally think this woman is a Republican, but I guess the speaker is not really a fan of Republicans because she's kind of using it as an insult, where she's saying this woman is not thinking of the needs of others. She's just thinking of herself. And so when the speaker's saying that, she's kind of implying that that's what Republicans do. I retreat to return the basics to the necessary place, dizzy with democracy. So why is she dizzy? What is it that people are feeling when they're dizzy? It's not a good feeling. This is, again, a continuation of that extended metaphor where she talks about going up against the mountain, right? She has gone up against the mountain. She has reached the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain is what she had to do right now, take the toilet paper away from the woman. And the fact that she had to take this toilet paper away, it has made her dizzy. Dizzy with democracy, again, this is sarcasm. I can hear her tone of voice that it's almost like she's saying, oh, this is what democracy is. Isn't it great? Look at what democracy has brought us. It's brought us a situation where somebody who needs toilet paper and she's poor, she's on food stamps, she can't have it. I have to take it away in the name of democracy, in the name of the government, right? The government is really a stand-in for democracy because this is a democratic government. And we have one more technique used here, the use of the word retreat, right? That's an example of diction. Because she could have just said that she left to go to the bathroom and return the toilet paper, but she's not just leaving, she's retreating, something that we associate with war, with somebody who's a loser, who somebody has to kind of run and hide before they're getting defeated, because they're about to be defeated. Who is the speaker about to be defeated by? Well, in a way, the speaker is in a battle. She's got internal conflict, right? The battle is within herself. Her compassionate side wants to help this woman, right? And it's very ironic that she works in an office where she's supposed to be giving to the poor. She's supposed to be helping them out with their basic needs. And the irony here is that she has to take it away. So she has a battle inside her. The compassionate side who wants to help this woman, and then the side that has to do her job in the name of democracy, just to take it away.